I'm June Lagmay, Lagmay. That is a indigenous Filipino name. My father is half Filipino, half white, and my mother is Japanese. They met in post-World War II Japan when my dad was a soldier. And actually, I was born there in Yokohama. So when I was a year old, my dad packed me and my mom up, and we came on a tramp steamer and settled in what is now a historic Filipino town, Los Angeles, and was raised in the local schools. My mom made sure that I danced in every year's Nisei Week parade. But in tribute to my dad's Filipino heritage, I also helped out at the St. Columban, Filipino Bazaar once a year. The passage of my father, I had to clean out his house. Dad was such a hoarder. But I came across so many things, the original wooden toys of my childhood. And most interestingly, I came across a cache of love letters that my mom and dad had written to each other when he had met her in Japan and said, "I'll come back for you. Got to go to the United States, work, make money, and then I will come back for you. We'll get married and I'll bring you to the United States." But the passion and the longing and the loneliness in those letters opened my eyes. My mom was a very severe, you got to do it woman who was not effuse, all right? And to read her letters, to say, "Eddie, don't forget me. I'm lonely for you. Come back for me. I miss you. I love you. I want," to remember that my mom and dad were not always elderly. They were young and vibrant too. And they had their time for passion. They had their time for longing. And out of that, I was born. In the Mexican-American Barrio Catholic Girls High School, I and another young girl found a mutual, intense attraction to each other. We actually fell in love and became lovers at 16, all right? So from 16 up to today, and I'm 65, so that's nearly 50 years, I have had more years with my Rita than I have without her. So the reason we fell in love in high school is, they say either birds of a feather or opposites attract. We were very opposite. I was teacher's pet. I got the good grades. I was the know-it-all. And she was Rita Bandita. She was caught smoking in the girls' room. She was always in detention. And we would pass each other in the hall. It was like, she would look at me with scorn and distaste, and I would do the same, except in those classes that we were together. And, she would be there in her zip-up boots and her acoustic guitar and singing songs, and it was very moving. And we started spending time together, and I think it's because I was not your typical Japanese American. I grew up with mainly Hispanic people. We had an identity, we liked the same kind of food, we liked the same kind of movies. So we fell in love, and it was very passionate, and we both loved the Beatles, we both loved music, we loved the hippie movement. So starting from being opposites, we ended up being we started finding we had so many things in common. I never pretended that I was going to ever have a boyfriend with my parents. They just knew that Rita showed up with me to every family event, every Christmas, Thanksgiving, and they just knew that she was automatically going to come. I never had the talk with my folks. My mom, sadly, because she didn't speak a lot of English and because she was from the old country, she never had an advanced education in Japan, was always after me to have a boyfriend and to get married. And it was difficult because I did not have the actual vocabulary or the language to tell her, Mom, my life is going to be different. I'm going to pursue a career. I believe in social change. I mean, there was just not enough Japanese language in me to articulate that. But I will tell you this, in 2008, when Prop 8 was on the horizon, and Rita and I said, before the door shut, before the election happened, we've got to take this opportunity and go to the county registrar and get that marriage certificate. And I let a few close cousins know, and those few close cousins told other cousins, who told aunts and uncles. And what was going to be a simple ceremony of signing a document on the registrar's desk came in to, can we come too? Can we come too? They surprised me to death. They're the ones that said, we want to be there when you sign the marriage certificate. They came out to me more than I came out to them. When I told my father, Dad, this is what's going to happen, and Rita and I are going to sign the marriage certificate, he goes, yeah, that's good. Your mom and I were discriminated against when I tried to marry her in Japan. They wouldn't even let us into the altar of the Catholic Church. We had to get married in the vestibule. And he showed up to the ceremony that we ended up having in our backyard with his dog, because he wasn't going to leave the dog at home. That was one of the most moving moments of my life, when my entire family insisted that they show up, albeit I did not technically send out any invitations. They just showed up and celebrated and shared a meal and cut the cake and had champagne. And that was like the culmination of my coming out. I did all my community work on this side. I was polite and civil with my family on this side. And then when I was 50 in 2008, but Prop 8 came, it all sort of met the two roads together. So we often laugh because I ended up at all her family celebrations. She ended up at all of mine. Our respective parents became very good friends. And it would get to the point where they would spend time together without us. They didn't need us to have a good time together. And they had enough in common. Both of Rita's dad and my dad were veterans of World War II, so they had a lot in common. So we would crack up a lot about that they loved each other. And I have to say, my family loved Rita, and Rita's family loved me. We are the same unit. We respect each other. We have planned our lives and our experiences together. We're comfortable with each other. We like to crack up at the same things. So it's been a good relationship, and I don't know how I would be or who I would be without her. The area that we lived in was so multicultural. I mean, there were Hispanics, Asians, African Americans. So that was one issue. The second issue is my own family is very diverse. I mean, we've got folks from Middle East, we've got Mexican, we've got New Mexican, we've got Polish, we've got Czech. So we always knew that we were just, a multi-glot, racial family. So actually, it's sort of funny, as I was growing up, I didn't attribute too much to it. I mean, I ate the Japanese food, but, we also went down to Alfera Street and ate taquitos. That's what happens to you when you live in Los Angeles. So until I was in my late teens, I kind of thought myself as one of them. I was a Hispanic. It wasn't till I went to UCLA for college and I started exploring what it was like to be Japanese American and seeking out other Asian Pacifics. And if I was lucky enough, I found some Asian Pacifics who were gay or lesbian. And one very good friend of mine, Paul Chen, we discovered each other at the what was then the Gay Community Center. It wasn't even the Gay and Lesbian Center, it was just the Gay Community Center. We both worked there. We saw each other there. We just ran up and hugged each other. It was like, yay, another one. And from then we started, He knew a few people, I knew a few people. We started having meetings in his apartment. People came on like Tak Yamamoto and Roy Kawasaki and Din Goishi. And that was sort of like the momentous push for us to say, okay, it's time to make an organization, and APLG was born. It was a intense changing of society in everywhere. That particular time, the late 60s going into the early 70s, voting patterns were changing. Woodstock, the protests against the Vietnam War, the Chicano movement was coming up, the Black Panthers were coming up, Stonewall happened. So it was all on that same roaring train. So I think it was in the midst of all this change. If APLG had not been created at that time, somebody else would have done it. The time was ready for it. Pretty much I and Rita were the only women that came to the very first meetings. There were a handful that came later. Now you have to remember, though, that this was a time when there seemed to be a division between gay men and lesbian women. It was even at the Gay Community Center, now the GLCSC, there was this unspoken rule that if you were a lesbian, you didn't wear a skirt, you didn't wear makeup. It was because you needed to make that separation in order to claim your place in the changing society. Now, I and a few other women, a good friend of mine who is Latinx, lesbian, Laura Esquivel, we found each other at the center, and we laughed because we like to wear makeup and we like to wear dresses as well as slacks. But the reason I tell you this is because the women were very shy in those days. There was more pressure about coming out. But I think from that point on until like Rita and I left APLG and I went to make a career for myself, the number of women just kept snowballing more and more and more. But yes, in the beginning, it was pretty much primarily men. But I always considered those guys my brothers, and we joked and we shared inside jokes. And I think a lot of my humor now is because of all the decades I spent with gay men. I majored in sociology in college, and I do remember there was one particular class I took. So I went to college 72 to 76. There was a class called deviant behavior, and homosexuality was deviant behavior. And I asked the professor, may I address the class? Because I don't believe that I am a deviant. And blessings to him, he allowed it. And I remember, some people were very supportive. Other people came up and told me I was going to hell. But it was important because I felt this big energy behind me because I was very holistic. I was watching Stonewall, Vietnam, Black Panthers, spirituality. It was all this big push behind me. So I eventually interned for Mayor Bradley's liaison to the gay community, and that kind of led to various political campaigns, which led to me being picked up as a member of a councilwoman's staff, which led to me being picked up for an assemblywoman's staff, which led to me pursuing a job with the city of Los Angeles and actually being eventually picked up by 4 prospective mayors. So I worked for Mayor Reardon, Mayor James Hahn, and Mayor Villaraigosa. And Mayor Villaraigosa eventually appointed me to be the Los Angeles City Clerk, and I served there for 4 years. And even then, it was like I wanted to be, I think being around gay men all my life, it just pushed and encouraged me to be insolent and naughty, So like, and so like I continued. I helped establish a LGBT group for city employees, and we would, like, when the Prop 8 hearings came down, we would arrange to have the court proceedings telecast into the council chamber so that we could all come on our lunch hour and watch it. I think once you're on the boat, and I have met so many inspiring people during my life who were my role models, like Tak Yamamoto. He was such a triple threat. He was one of the original members of Asia Pacific Lesbian and Gays. He was prominent in the Japanese American Citizens League for San Fernando Valley, and he was one of the prime movers and shakers for the Manzanar Committee up to his death a few precious years ago. Su Kunitomi Embry was a great role model for me. Rose Ochi was a great role model for me. George Takei is a great role model for me. If you meet these people who have humor and compassion and kindness and the spark of life in them, you feel responsible to carry that on. You don't want to slip back. You want to keep pushing that envelope. So it's a synergy. It's a synergy. You don't do it by yourself. Everyone pollinates and sparks other people, and it just makes this beautiful, blooming community. And that's so true in any activist aspect that you look at, whether it's Asian American, African American, LGBT. You make your way. You fight it, but you don't fight it with bitterness. You don't fight it with hate. You fight it with love and compassion and kindness and cleverness and obstinacy and insolence. I think that's the best way to make your mark. And it feels better too. It feels better because you can laugh with your lover in bed at night and just crack up about how funny life is and how ridiculous things can be sometimes. I retired in 2013, so I've been retired, 6 years now. Now that I've come to this age, I'm watching the 50th anniversary of Abbey Road, the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, and it's making me just zoom back to those days and feel like a young girl again. Rita and I took a trip to Liverpool just in July, and we got to go to the Cavern nightclub, and they had some retro 50s, 60s bands playing up there with their tight suits and their skinny ties. And we were dancing at the Cavern like I was 15 again. It was great. I don't feel any older. I would love to give like a moral lesson to young people today, but I know it would be useless because everyone has to find life their own way and make their own mistakes and make the discovery of maturity at the points that are necessary for them. So I would try and be more compassionate and say, while you're on this life journey, just don't forget to not be so hard on yourself, to laugh, to be kind, to be courteous and civil. Don't let anything that you do or other people do put a boundary on you. Just always stretch beyond the boundary. But I know that anything I say, people are going to find their own road and make their own choices. I just hope that they have as much fun along the way and learn as much lessons along the way and have as rich experience and good friendships and good family ties that I have been fortunate to have.